Welcome to Wolf Tales, where you'll be hearing stories from our own staff and volunteers here at Wolf Connection. We'll also be speaking with artists, photographers, videographers, and musicians about the way the wolf has influenced their work. Here on Wolf Tales, we are welcoming in Kate Ochsman. She is a photographer, but she's also a safari guide. And starting Monday, or starting next week, whenever you guys listen to this, she's actually going to be guiding through Yellowstone National Park with Natural Habitat Adventures. So, Kate, first of all, welcome to the podcast and to Wolf Tales. How are you doing over there?
Thank you. I'm really good. It's interesting. It's like a high 30s right now, and for winter in Yellowstone, I was promised a lot more snow. So it's raining and the snow is all melting. So I don't really know what's going on with the winter here, but other than that, good.
Yeah, that's been the theme basically for the last 4 or 5 episodes of people that we've interviewed, is that the snow's just not there, and I guess there's a lot of balance that's sort of shifted a little bit for everybody, including.
It's still early, kind of, though, isn't it? I mean, February could be a lot of snow.
I hope so, because everybody here in Montana, it's like all these old grizzly guys. They mark time by winters.
Right.
How many winters have you spent here? And you're like, this is my first, and it's very nice. It's very pleasant. So, yeah, my little badge.
Yeah, your little badge. Yeah, you're going to go through your badge of courage, basically, when the winter hits. So this is crazy. So before we started, you were saying you were a safari guide in Africa, certified safari guide. So tap into that really quick. How did you get involved over there?
I'll keep it very, very brief. Well, first of all, I lived in Los Angeles for about 8 years, and actually I met SR years and years ago at a mutual friends through, I used to do film, he does music. And so while I was in LA, I was doing film, and I also weekly volunteered at a former sanctuary. So I worked with big cats. I originally actually went in to try to work with wolves and tigers, and then I just fell in love with leopards and lions and bears. So I started working with them. And it got me I started learning about different issues that wildlife face throughout the world. And I learned about rhino poaching in 2013, and my heart broke. I was, embarrassed as a person, and I wanted to get involved. So I decided 2014 was the year I go to Africa. I didn't know how or where. And of course, the universe, the way things work out, many failures, and then the most incredible opportunity arose. And so 6 weeks later, I was in the African bush doing a conservation internship, blending film, photography, raising awareness about endangered species, like most notably rhino and the poaching, lions and elephants and pangolin, of course. So that was in 2014. And then I went back to LA, and my heart was so torn between two different worlds. And I felt like the life I was leading and the value system that I developed weren't really aligned. And so I fought myself for years, and then finally decided to just get my butt over to Africa. And I went to safari guide school. So in 2017, I was basically at summer camp for the year with other adults, just learning about animals in the bush. Wow. Living in a tent. Yeah. And that's really when I started doing photography more seriously and using it as a means to talk about conservation, connect people with the wild world. And I thought I was good when I first started there. When I look back at my images, I see just so many holes, but I guess it's that kind of early on, I guess a little bit of that ego that keeps us going and driving for things. But also, I really got to practice wildlife photography every single day. And so kind of going into that, I was supposed to go back to South Africa in March and move there permanently with my dog. And then COVID happened, and I had just come up to Yellowstone with a rental car, a week's worth of clothing, my dog, and to photograph bison in the snow and hopefully see wolves. But, I didn't know how common that would be or what, the chances of that. And so I came up here, and then everything shut down. It was the perfect timing. And I stayed here for a week, and then I wanted to see what happened with the world. So then I stayed another week, and I said, and then whatever, almost a year later, I'm still here. I love it so much. It's a great community of people. There's no fences. So bison and elk, mule deer are roaming through my driveway daily. it's wonderful.
So, what do you think inspires you to wolf photography specifically when there's so many animals on the landscape in Yellowstone, and you really have your pick of some of the most charismatic and popular animals out there?
Oof, SR, that is a great question. Um, I love all animals, primarily, as we say, charismatic megafauna, like the
Yeah.
big sexy animals,
Yep.
bison, wolves, elk, moose. I love apex predators, and wolves are apex predators. I truly never dreamed that I would be able to see them in my life or be able to spend so much time with them. Like I can go out, because we can get into this later, but because of the way Yellowstone is, I can see wolves every single day, which is such an honor. And it is mind blowing to me. And so what is it that I love about them?
Even if that's challenging, because I think it is challenging for most people. I don't know what it is about this specific species, but we're kind of on a mission to figure it out. But what emotions come up for you when you're taking photos of wolves?
Well, it's switched because of having lived in Yellowstone and understanding the realities of the persecution wolves face outside of the park and in the surrounding areas, and also understanding that my getting to see them every day because of the hard work that other people put in is also a privilege. So I've always loved wolves. I've been here trying to understand my relationship with them and my connection to them. Because I guess in short, they're so similar to us, and I've grown up with dogs, and there's something so familiar. And I take it for granted because it's like, oh, those are just like big, beautiful dogs playing. Okay, whatever. In the most like lovely way. And so it's not even so much photographing them that I love. I just really like being around them, and I like spending time with them. And I've come to really appreciate sitting amongst wolf watchers and community members who are also drawn to these animals into wild areas because of them. And like wolves might be a half a mile away, and we're watching on our scopes and just, I don't know, watching their little behaviors and the way they interact. It reminds me of the best of what we are and what we could be. And as someone who travels alone and is far from my family often, I look at the cohesiveness that wolf packs have and their bonds to their family, and it's very admirable. I think we've lost a lot of that, and so there's a romance that comes into that for me. Yeah. And that balance between, it's like lions, that balance between that yin yang, very gentle, very loving, very family, and can also be ferocious hunters at the same time. It's that polarity that we have, and we have that in us as well. I guess that's the whole concept of the wolf that you feed.
Yeah. No, those are all the things that Stephen and we've touched on this, throughout, I think, almost every episode that we've had and every person that we've interviewed. And also that's a lot of the things that we talk about up at Wolf Connection. It's a lot of people who, like you said, they're missing this piece of themselves that, it's the reason why we exist. I mean, people want to have this portion of the wild with them in some way. Unfortunately, very, very rarely does it ever work out. But the wolves and the wolf dogs that come to us are able to give us a little bit of that insight that you get every day at Yellowstone, that you're able to see them out in their natural environment, to be able to be at them from a big distance away, which you were touching on earlier, that you really want to give them the space, whether it's a bison, an elk, whatever animal you're photographing, keep that natural distance and then some, so that they can really be on their own and do the natural things that they need to do.
Yeah, I like being close to animals if that's possible. I like giving them the space to make the choice to approach me if possible. I firmly believe that there are so few wild places where animals can exist and just live their lives, and it's hard for them to live their lives. When I'm here, I'm a guest in their home, and I'm very aware of that. That said, so one thing I've learned from my time in conservation, whether it's in Africa or here, is that each species and each community, each area is going to have a very different situation. So, for example, elephants in southern Botswana and how to deal with them is going to be very different from the elephants in Damaraland, Namibia. And so we can't just kind of put a blanket, these are the rules for every area, every situation. So how that ties into wolves is that because of, again, the situation around the parks and the hunting quotas for wolves around Yellowstone, and also because of the habituation that happens in Yellowstone, I believe it's ethical and for the animals, in the best interest of the animals, to be far away from them.
Right, because when we talked before, you were saying something like, because we were talking about how this might be one of our shorter series, but you were adamant about having some time to mention the ways that conservation and ethics really inform your photography. And I found that to be very profound and admirable, especially as an artist, because, for the sake of art, there's a lot of things that people will sacrifice or overlook. And I think it's very admirable to be the type of artist who has ethics and conservation sort of neck and neck on the list of priorities when you're out there creating.
So for two things, I think there's a huge difference between art, wildlife photography, and wildlife art photography.
Yeah, it seems like it seems as though you have a perspective as a photographer that maybe the average individual who goes out with a camera and is just looking to grab that photo for that experience, whereas you're taking a couple of more steps inward to really find out, the reason why you're here in this spot, taking these photos, of these animals. Is that sort of the track that you're on? That's kind of led you to a little bit?
Yes. So I think when we go out there with photography, you have to figure out what kind of person you are and also what kind of person you want to be. And this has been part of my journey being here, because coming to Yellowstone, it's like, oh my God, all I want to do is get a close-up portrait of a wolf, which isn't necessarily art. It's, oh, look, I saw a wolf and that's what its face looks like. Cool. Yep. Like anybody can really get that photo. And then you also have to realize, because of the realities of the hunting around the parks and the danger that the wolves face, and that if they're too habituated to people, too used to people on close foot, that puts the wolf's life in danger. And that's why the ethical thing in Yellowstone in particular is to be far away and watch the wolves. And what that leads me to do is to consider the environment that the wolves live in. So instead of, again, just like, oh, look, Katie saw a wolf today. Awesome. It's, you get the feeling and the sense of what their world is and how they fit into that world. And that's where I think storytelling comes in, and more, I think, I don't know what the word I should use. I guess more interesting, more advanced photography rather than just a close-up portrait, which I also love and have always wanted to get. And there's an element too of, are you trying to take from the environment, or are you trying to support it and these animals? Because let's face it, photography is similar to trophy hunting in certain ways. It's the same skills that I utilize. If I'm walking wildlife, I'm going to be downwind. I'm going to be tracking. I'm going to be shooting. They just don't die at the end. And it's fun. There's a primal element to it. And especially with creating art, how it can make that animal look grand and emotional or whatever I'm going for. But the dangerous side of it is, I know a lot of photographers, it comes to, I want to get this, I want to get that. It's like hunters when they talk about their lists. So again, how that relates to the wolves, getting close to wolves in Yellowstone puts them in direct danger, because they get too used to people on foot. And as soon as we see it all the time, as soon as they get out into Cook City or wherever it is, they get shot in the streets because they're used to people and they don't think people are a threat. For any animal to successfully survive in the wild, it really needs to have a little bit of a fear of people. So I think that's where photographers need to check themselves and say, okay, what is my value system? Do I value this animal's life, or do I value my trophy? And that's a hard question. And it's not, you might not like the answer, because I wanted the trophy, but I had to grapple with myself and figure out that I value that animal's life more. And also, again, I get to see them because of the work that the Wolf Project puts in, studying them and getting to understand wolves better for the world round. Yeah. So and again, just learning how to be a different type of photographer because of Yellowstone and the far game. And again, understanding the realities of the situation on the ground here that animals face. So my background is from Africa. And do you know how close animals come to you in Africa? Do you know how awesome it is to have a lion walk right by your car door? And you're like, I have to use a wide angle lens because it's too close.
Yeah.
In Yellowstone, you're like, I need that reach. I need that zoom.
You know what this reminds me of is really the trophic cascade effect that we were talking about with some of the biologists, right? Because of the work that is being done on the scientific side, the observational side, the guiding side, it's now trickling down into other professions, such as photography and videography and making things like that. And it's able to expand the message, or like you said, expand globally, so that people, because these wolves, especially in Yellowstone, are famous. '06 had a book written about her. Right. All of these wolves, Rick McIntyre writing specific books about specific
individuals,
wolves, and it's all encompassing, and you're all part of this intricate web of, like you say, how are we going to interact with this species and make sure that we do what's best for it in the long run, as this cascade effect really sort of trickles down into other people and other professions that are not in the scientific community.
Yeah. Amazing point. Yeah.
I mean, what I love about, because you sent us 4 photos, which were, if you're listening to the episode, you can look at these on Instagram, and we're going to go through these. I love that there's, to me, what I get from you is that there's this layered approach, because you're further away, and so there's these layers. You almost have to be like, oh, I'm looking for the wolf, but there are so many other things that encapsulate this photo or these photos, that it's not just the one point, like you said, the close-up shot where it's, you see the face. So the photo I'm looking at right now is the one. I don't know if it's a wolf pup, but it's off in the distance. There's a bunch of big trees behind it, and it's just sort of sitting in a meadow. So take us through that process of, like, how did you come upon this photo? What were you thinking in that moment when you were looking at it and taking this shot?
I had to learn to be a better photographer, first in northern South Africa, and then also coming to Yellowstone, because things are further away. I used to just want the trophies and the close-up photos, and I had to learn to incorporate the environment. It's so much more information for me as a photographer to be considering constantly: the composition, the light, the layers you said, if there's foregrounds, the midground, the background. But I think it creates for a much more interesting photo, truthfully, that rather than like an ID photo. So the one that you're talking about in particular, what I love about, so wolves, if they come close and you're able to get somewhat of a closer photo, because this wolf was probably, 100 yards away, and I was in my vehicle. I was driving to Hayden Valley, and literally I'm like driving along, and some guy in an SUV just kind of gives me a little smirk and just points. And I'm probably singing to music, not really paying attention. Like, I'm just going to get to Hayden. And then I just like look, and I'm like, oh. And there's 2 wolves just trotting down the road, a black and a gray. And I was like, ooh. So then I kind of, when the cars passed, I turned around and pulled off in a pullout. And just from my car, was able to make a quick photos. It happens in like a minute. It happens so quickly in Yellowstone. So you just always have to be ready. And this one I like because it's a collared wolf. So I think also as part of the story of Yellowstone, which is so amazing, like in Africa, I don't want the animals to be collared necessarily, but here I like collared wolves because they're part of the reintroduction. We like the work of so many people brought them back, and they're studied. And so I love that. Basically this wolf was like kind of in this meadow, heading off into the forest to start doing their wolf trails to go back to where the den site was, because this was over the summer, so they were still denning. And it kind of was looking around and gave us one look. I snapped a photo, and that was it. And it reminds me of like a fairy tale, or going into the woods with the wolves and the shadows of the forest and like the secrets of the forest.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know what just popped. Do either of you remember the movie Willow? Back, that immediately. I don't know why I got that vibe. We're just sort of we're going into this, like you said, this enchanted place, and we don't really know where we're going. But there's this creature that comes out ever so often, and you see it, and then it just sort of ducks back in. I don't know why I had that.
Well, and there's a darkness to it, because like you have the stories of the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood. There's an element of that.
Right.
And you don't know if it's going to be a good or bad experience. It's kind of like the mystical, creepy, enchanted forest.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. And that's, again, getting back to the mystical part of it and the fantasy part of it. And I just, like you said, and for this one, you just, like you said, you pulled off, you got out your camera and you shot these shots. Do you find that there's meaning after you take some of the photos? In other words, you're just going out, you're not really looking for a specific shot. You're not looking for a specific feeling. And then you take these shots, you come back, you look at your roll, or you scroll through what you took that day. Do they hit you afterwards sometimes and not always in the moment when you're taking pictures of wolves?
For sure. I've got two answers to that. The first is like this photo, I think if I'm remembering correctly, it was back in June or July. And I didn't edit it till, I don't know, a few days ago, just because I didn't really know how to. And I've been working on my post-processing. So I feel like I know how to handle difficult lighting, because you see that contrast, like that extreme, those rays of light. It's hard without making it look overblown and HDR and very fake. So yeah, there's certain things I don't touch for a while. Also, when I have experiences with whether it's been wolves or lions that are so heartfelt and emotional, I can't look at it for at least a month or more because I start to cry because I just get so happy. And also sometimes, photographing things, I'm not always necessarily in the moment. So there's definitely stock in me not photographing wolves and just spending time with them and getting to enjoy, because then I'm more present versus, again, I'm there to get something or make something, look for angles. So I miss moments a lot when I do photography. I get to experience different details that I wouldn't with just my naked eye, but I miss things. So I think it's important to do both.
No, I love that approach, because and that's a lot of what you're saying really ties back to the mission at Wolf Connection when we're hanging out with the pack. And yeah, we all take our pictures and our selfies, and we take video because we want to, educate and also show people, hey, come and visit us. And this is the pack that we have. But you're right. We really try to scale some of that back at certain points during the day when you can just go in and sit and just sort of be and observe and see those moments of, things that'll just sort of stick in your brain as opposed to sticking on a device. And it's really enlightening to hear that from someone who's in the world of capturing moments to keep these moments for forever, essentially. So I think that's such a great, it's just great to hear it from another perspective as opposed to, what we talk about up at Wolf Connection. That's great. I love that so much. I have to move to this photo because Steven, I showed Elena and she immediately gasped.
Which one's that? The coyote one?
No, the buffalo.
Oh yeah.
Charging or escaping as the pack is chasing them. So this is black and white, I assume, right? You changed it to black and white, Kate, this one?
Yeah, I have the colors as well, but it was just a very kind of flat, snowy day. So the colors didn't make it pop. And I like the kind of timelessness and the Wild West feel of black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I don't know how rare this is to see or, to be able to catch the action shot that way. So again, go through where you were. How did this one come about? Because this is really epic, this photo.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is really special to me. And the story behind it is really special. As a conservation success story is really special. So this was, I think maybe December or November, wolf watching with the Wolf Watchers out in Slough Creek in Yellowstone. This is the Junction Butte pack. So first we were basically watching some junction wolves. It's a pack of 34 wolves right now. It's huge. There's 35, but one of them doesn't really hang out. So it's 34. The second largest pack Yellowstone has ever seen. And in the same territory that the Druids in the 2000s were, who had the even larger pack. So it's just massive. It's like wolves never end. It's like a conveyor belt when they start running.
Wow, yeah.
And so they were up on a hill, just kind of like, I don't know, being wolves, just sitting around doing nothing. Then all of a sudden, us wolf watchers, somebody's like, hey, look. And all of a sudden these bison start stampeding down into the water where the Slough Creek is. And we see these wolves running after them. And I'm really grateful because I had my scope that day so I could just watch, but I also brought up my camera. Lesson for photographers, always have your camera on you. And I don't even heed that all the time, but I'm glad I did that day. And so, I just snapped some photos. And these are the pups, or the yearlings chasing the bison, testing them. Because, as wolves hunt, they basically check out if there's any weak of the prey species, and then they'll take that one down. Any sick, weak, whatever. And they herd stronger because of that. So it was, again, super quick. And this all lasted for maybe 5 minutes. But what's so special about this to me is that, as you know, the last wolf was shot in the 1920s in Yellowstone, and they were reintroduced to the ecosystem and to the West and really to the lower 48 in 1995. And also the bison were pretty much massacred from the United States in the 1800s. And in the early 1900s, there were a mere 25 or 21 bison in Yellowstone. And so what's now in Lamar Valley, you've got the Lamar Buffalo Ranch. And that was actually the Congress raised $15,000 in the early 1900s. So this is a lot of money to buy another 20-some bison and do breeding ranch to bring the bison numbers back. So Yellowstone is a place where a lot of conservation has happened. And obviously also the mountain lions have been able to come back, the grizzlies. But in this photo, what you're seeing is what we can do if we work together and we want to restore ecosystems. So these two animals, which were essentially wiped off of the American West and wiped out of Yellowstone, are back and they're living and they're hunting and they're getting hunted and living their lives what it would have been like before we even intervened and killed them all. So that's why I love this photo so much. This is conservation success. And that's why I like it in black and white as well, because it looks timeless. This is something we would have seen before we even walked the grounds.
Yeah, it would have looked just like this. Who knows how long ago?
Absolutely, yeah. If you had it in the in the old movie theaters or things like that, if somebody was actually shooting video of it, yeah, you just have black and white or
the scene would have looked the same probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it, man.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's just it's really, and like I said, there's so many layers and there's so much depth even in a black and white photo. But it's like the white, the whites really pop because you can see the different layers of the snow and the different, tiers. And it's really captivating, almost like you're there, that you're looking at this happen.
So how far were you from them when you were taking this photo?
Oh my, hundreds of yards. This is so teeny. It's such a teeny little site.
So you're using what are you using? Like a 7200 with an extender?
At this time, I use Sony. Okay, so this is the thing. I use Sony. I use a Sony A7R4, which has 60 megapixels in it. So that means I can crop so far in. I don't think I had to crop that far into this, but certainly half or a quarter or something. Yeah, and I was using a 1:400 Sony zoom lens. So it was all the way at 400. Of
course.
Yeah. And then I want my aperture to be as low as possible because the action is very quick and I need a quick shutter speed. And also since it's so far away, the aperture, you're not going to get much separation between the subject and the background.
Do you remember what shutter speed you had at the time? I'm just curious.
She logs it. I love it.
They must be booking it.
Yeah, and also handheld, far away.
Nuts. Love it.
It's fun, and it's just lucky. It's the right place, the right time. If you're out there enough, that's the other thing. If you're out there enough, and you have the luxury of time, like I do. You're gonna get nice shots, but it just might be one every year or something.
I mean, that's all you really need. I mean, it's funny because when Steven's up, or when he was, at the ranch more, and he was shooting photos of the wolves there, it was the same thing. He goes, if she or he would just turn this way, and I want to get them sniffing this, it was amazing because it's just funny how the mind, or specifically photographers' minds work about just waiting for that, well, I guess that perfect shot or what the things that have to go into getting a shot like this or the shot that, I mean, Steven created the podcast logo with one of his pictures of Willow. And it's probably one of, if it's not one of my favorite photos, dude, it's probably top 3. And it's such a beautiful shot. And I mean, it's more of, like you said, the head, the head shot where it's, I guess that trophy shot that you're talking about, Kate. But it's, I don't know. There's so much depth to that photo.
Well, I was telling Kate before we started this, I can't imagine how hard it is to get pictures of these wolves because our wolves are a pain to take photos of. Like some of them I've been there for 4 or 5 years. I have never gotten a good photo of. And I know them personally. I've fed them. And some of them are impossible to get photos of. So I can't even imagine. I mean, Willow and I have a good relationship. So she stands 5 feet in front of me. I barely have to punch in the zoom. So I can't imagine getting these. It would be it's a huge contrast, I think, from,
It's certainly a challenge. And also I want to say there is so much weight in a beautiful portrait shot. I do love those. And that's what every photographer wants as well. So just going back to if it's possible, I just don't think it's something that people can aim for in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Without walking wolves and, putting them in danger, as I've said before. But I also think that's where, and a lot of people are have very strong opinions on captivity or rescues or sanctuaries or zoos, whatever. I'm a bit more lenient to that as long as the animals are treated well and have a great environment. I mean, wild places are dwindling. And so sometimes captive situations are one of the only places that I think animals can still survive or be because of what we've done. But so in that sense, there's also a lot of, as you guys know and talk about, I'm sure, a lot of wolf hybrids and a lot of people get wolves as pets. If a sanctuary can provide a great home for those animals and treat them well, I think that is a good place where photographers, of course, you have to do your research to make sure it's an ethical place. But if the animals are allowed to be in their environment and you can be outside photographing them, I think that's a really great alternative and option to getting beautiful portraits. But like SR, like you said, if you can.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, Rafa, I've never gotten a good photo of, I never have ever gotten even a decent photo of him. Like you have better pictures of wild wolves than I've gotten of Rafa. You know what I mean?
So technically this photo is terrible. It is soft. It was very far away. I had to use topaz sharpen to make it sharp and denoise. It was quick. It was dark. So unfortunately, it's not a photo that I think could be blown up onto a wall or submitted for a comp or something like that. But it is a really cool moment. So it's a black yearling wolf and a coyote sitting next to each other, looking out into the sagebrush. And so how this happened was, this was the Junction Butte Pack again, and that takes over the Lamar Slough Creek area. Right. And so I was driving out of Lamar, okay, I'm just going to make my way home. And again, I always have my camera next to me in the passenger seat. It's also why I like to be alone. Stay away from my gear, guys. Give me space. But I've got my camera there, and I'm driving out, ready to go home. And then all of a sudden I look to the left, and I just see it's over the bridge, one of the bridge, I think the Lamar River Bridge, and I just see a black wolf. I don't know, 50 feet away from the road or 50 yards from the road. And I'm like, oh. And so I pull out, and like I tend to do, I open up my sunroof and I stand up and I'm looking so I could photograph it. And then the wolf sees me and it runs off. Yeah. So at this time of the year, it's when the females are still denning. So you have lots of wolves running around eating meat and taking meat back to the pups and regurgitating and feeding the pups. So you see lots of random wolves in this time versus the whole pack traveling together. So this is one such, it was a black yearling just going off and doing its thing. Mm. So, of course I stopped, and then it's Yellowstone in the summer. So 50 billion other people stop. Mm. And, we're kind of I'm using my guide sense, just from knowing behavior of driving up and anticipating if the wolf is running south, west, I'm just going to anticipate and go to another pullout. Mm-hmm. So I go up there and I stand up in my sunroof again and I look and I wait, and within a few minutes, the wolf comes trotting down through the sagebrush, and all this, and then I see some pronghorn. So the wolf starts running towards the pronghorn, which it can never catch. The pronghorn are way too fast. But the wolf gets to this area and it sits down, and all of a sudden, this coyote just walks up behind the wolf and just sits down. And they're just sitting there together for about a minute, which is quite a long time in the animal world. And they're just looking around, and I'm snapping away like, this, what is happening? And then all of a sudden, they kind of look at each other, and the wolf looks and the coyote looks. And then the coyote snaps and starts chasing the wolf. And then the coyote's mate comes and starts chasing the wolf off. So this yearling is just like, I don't know. It's like a dog. Like, I don't know what just happened. Oh, this is scary. And just runs away. And these coyotes chase it off from what would be their den site. So clearly they had their pups there as well. And they were chasing off this wolf. So that's the story behind that.
That is unbelievable. He looks like Mozzie / Willow.
Yeah. No, you know what too though? It's got. I mean, when you zoom into it, it looks like there's some brown in there. It reminds me a little bit of Kenai,
Yeah.
like Kenai Mozzie.
Yeah, just not the
Mix, like
face,
you're
but
saying.
the body for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can see it's got a longer snout.
The
That is
face
incredible.
looks like Willow to me. A little bit.
You just love Willow. That's why.
Oh yeah, she's my girl.
No, that's man. I mean, what is it? What are the odds of finding that type of a? Again, like you said, it just.
I've
These
never
things
heard
just
of it
happen.
before. I mean,
Yeah.
There's two ways of doing photography. You take a photo or you make a photo. And certain photographers go out with an image and then they look for the setting or they put things in place to get what's already in their mind. And a lot of that's one type of photography. And a lot of wildlife photography is reactive. You know, you go out, I have images in my mind of how I want to photograph moose or fox or whatever it is. But then I'm limited by whatever, or bolstered by whatever situation I find. So then I'm taking photos. Like that example is purely reactionary. Just seeing something happen, having my camera in my hands and just taking a photo, capturing a moment.
yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to formulate. The thought I was trying to formulate, because this is obviously our first episode of this nature, and we're definitely gonna do many more because this one's awesome, and we still have one more photo, but. Like before I ever took photos of animals, even the ones at Wolves, at Wolf Connection, the ones I have personal relationships with, it was much easier to describe what a photographer does. But when you start taking pictures of animals that you can't pose, you can't position them, wolves don't listen. You can't always predict the lighting or the spot they'll be in. A lot of times the photo isn't perfect by technical terms, but there's something really special happening there. But it's a lot harder to figure out what that is when you can't control the scenario and you're just taking photos of what is and what is right in front of you. Like, what's the job of a photographer if they can't control the scene that they're shooting, if they can't pose something?
So I think the first thing is there's many different types of photographers. For example, like Nat Geo, what is it? The epitome of wildlife photography.
Yeah,
you go out on assignment for 6 weeks, 3 months, hoping to get shots of certain species. And I think you're pretty much just trying to get whatever you can at that point for certain elusive species. Like Paul Nicklin's a great example, like the way he photographs narwhals. He was on assignment for, I think 6 weeks or months, hoping to just see them. And then like at the very last day, he got to see them. So you kind of take what you can get and try to make the best of it. And that's where craft and training and your personal development come in. Post-processing, I think, is a huge part of it. Also, what photos we choose to release. Like I've got so many photos that I don't consider art, which is the direction I like to go in for what I show people. I've got tons of great, cool wildlife photos.
Right.
So I think it depends on a lot.
In this particular type of photography, because you can't control the setting, because you're not positioning the lighting and the subject, et cetera, and the majority of the power lies in the photos you're selecting. When you select a photo, what is it that you're trying to show, or what is it that you're trying to communicate by the photos that you select?
My personal mission for my photography and my art is to showcase wildlife in a way that shows how remarkable they are, that gives them glory and respect and in a dignified way and showcase their beauty and in a way that I really also I love big, strong, bold, intense, masculine photography. And I also love the sweetest, most gentlest, kind moments between lovers or mothers and children or siblings and friends of wildlife to show the relatability to us.
That's a super satisfying answer, actually. You could just write that one down as the answer to the question.
Thank you. It's taken me a long time to come to that, so thank you.
I love it. I mean, but it shows. I mean, just in the photos that we've shown, it really, you can see the range of, like you said, you have this, the three, we'll get to the fourth, is that, you have this innocence, this mysticality, this fierceness, and then, it's like you run the gamut. And just in the three photos and the fourth photo we'll get to, hits all those targets, at least from what I'm seeing, from my perspective. And I'm not a photographer, but visually I can see where you could get each of these different emotions from these photographs. That's, for me, that's enough. I mean, that's such a wide range, and it is a great answer.
Yeah, this fourth one I think is my favorite one. So
mine too.
I'm excited to get to that one.
Yeah, I love it. So, man, and was this in the springtime, or when was this taken? Because I know you went black and white again on this one. So if you could see it, so it's a wolf. Is it crossing through a lake or a short part of a stream? Where is this wolf, and what's the context here?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite photos. And again, this was, if I show you, I should send you guys the raw image so you can see how hard it is and how far and terrible. And I had to be quite creative in figuring out what this story is or making something beautiful and artistic. So this was in Hayden Valley, my favorite place. When Hayden pops, it pops. Otherwise, it is dead. So this was like a poppin' day. And this is the Wapiti Pack, which is my favorite in Yellowstone. We got 20 individuals. And this was back in spring when they were denning. So you had this one gray who was crossing Allen Creek because it's filled with water at that point from, the winter melt of the snow. And last I saw it, it was totally dry, by the way, in October. So yeah, this wolf was basically just crossing back and forth. I think going back to the den site, going out trying to hunt, get food, and then go back to its family. So this was quite far. And I have been playing a lot with exposure compensation. That is my favorite thing to play with photography-wise. And this one, I made it quite dark because I saw that there was this still reflection of the wolf and then also the path it left behind in its wake. And so I just made it really dark so that the white from the water really shone through and the reflection. And then I edited it like this. I will send you guys the raw photo because it is so different looking.
Wow.
This is where post-processing really comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a cool photo because you chose to, as far as the ratio of what's being shown here, the wolf is a very small portion of this photo.
Mm.
And somehow it still is so much about that animal. And this trail behind it is just really cool. That's my favorite one for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of my favorite. I love the reflections in the, because you don't even see that there's trees in this photo, but you can see the reflection of the trees in the creek. And it's just, to me, that again, it's that whole layering thing that I talked about earlier with your photos, Kate, is that there's so many different things you can pick out and go, oh, I didn't see that beforehand. And it's, did I ask this already? But like in your post-processing, are these things that you come across that you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even notice? Like, I think clearly as you were talking about when you were taking it, you saw the reflections and you're like, yes, and the trail. Like that, I guess, was the main point or the main body of the photo. But do you see these little things afterwards in your post-processing and how you want to tweak the photo to make it, like you say, share the story that you wanted to share?
Yes. Yes, for sure. And in both ways that are good or bad. Like there's more often like,
Right.
no, I didn't realize this was happening. This photo is ruined. Or, there's this extra thing, or there's this branch covering the eye, and that whole moment I should have, but this again was also a reactive photo because of what was happening in the conditions. Like I really couldn't have conceived of doing this and like going out with that aim. And so that's the other side. It's like you kind of co-create. It's like improvisation. You co-create with whatever's happening. So again, as an artist, there's that element as well. I always describe it like that game where you put your hands on somebody's hands and you just keep building. Like for me, this kind of moment was like that. And I got home and it just was far and this, and I put it in black and white and saw what I could do with it. So yeah, there's definitely elements like I saw the reflection when I was doing it. Yeah, but I focused on one part of the story. It was nice that it unfolded in a different way.
Yeah. And just so Kate's actually looking up on her wall because this is one of the pictures on her wall. This was a last minute addition before we started because she sent us the 3. She goes, wait, I have to send the 4th one. It's on my wall. So
yeah, I'm glad you sent that one.
Yeah, totally. This is great.
I get hesitant to release the things that I really love because I don't know how and what I want to do with it yet. So that's why I was like, holding off on you guys because this is my favorite one. I have it on my wall, so I really do love it. I like the story that it tells, and I like thinking about it in terms of the way wolves have impacted the ecosystem. And like, one little animal leaves this huge wake behind it, and the trophic cascade, which is something you mentioned earlier. So
I would imagine all of these photos, every one that you take or any, the 4 that we discussed today, that they all hold some sort of a spot somewhere inside of you that, it all means a different something every day. I mean, does it ever evolve for you? Does it mean something one day and then it shows up in a different way? When you look at it, whether it's on your wall, on your camera, on your computer, as you're editing it, do you ever see that those things change over the course of time?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I guess as a little photography tip as well, like this is why you should never really delete things unless it's out of focus or whatever. But I've gone back so many times to different photos and either my abilities with post-processing have advanced, like the one I sent you, the foresty one, the dreamy foresty one. Like I finally felt like it's maybe not where I want it to be yet, but at least I'm much closer than what my abilities were 5 months ago before I was doing all these post-processing classes. Mm-hmm. So there's that element. So I'm finally able to tell more of a story, or I'm able to see it differently because of what I'm able to do. But yeah. Trying to think, does anything feel different? I don't know.
She's scanning the room, by the way.
I'm like looking around my walls. I don't know. Do you feel different to me?
She's got photos on her wall, so she's just she's just twisting in her chair, being like, "Is anything different?" I can't tell. No, I mean this. Like Steven said, this is going to be one of the first of many that we're going to talk with different photographers and other artists. Regular artists, meaning painting artists or videographers and things like that. And it's such a pleasure to have you as the jumping off point for this because of the work that you're doing and the ethical work that you're really doing while you're taking photographs. And I love the mission. I love your angle, no pun intended, that you're taking with your photography. And I think that's something that I think it's needed. And I think it's something that is well received on our end. And it's beautiful in the way that you're trying to incorporate it into your work. Kate, tell everybody where, first of all, you guys need to, she's going to give you where she can find, but definitely check out her Instagram because it's filled with many, many, many more photos than the 4 that we touched on today. So just, Kate, let everybody know where they can find your work. I know you have a website as well, but just tell everybody, definitely your socials and places where they can find your work.
Thank you. Yeah, the biggest place right now is Instagram. I am developing a new website and it's still very much under construction. And I will be selling photos at some point. I'm just not sure how I want to be doing that and to which level. So I've held off on that for a number of years. And it's something I should figure out. But yeah, Instagram is a great place. And please always, if anybody has any personal questions about wolves or Yellowstone or photography, please reach out to me. Send me a slide into my DMs on Instagram. Send me a message. I'll help you in whatever way that I can.
Right.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle so people can get in touch with you with all that?
Oh, it is at my name, Kate Ochsman, which is KateOchsman.
This is great. I know, Steve. Yeah, and thanks for. I mean, this is great because Stephen had the connection with you, and this is, like I said, this is a great jumping off point for this section of Wolf Tales for us, and you were perfect for this. And again, can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing, the photographs you're taking, and yeah, this is great.
We got to. Hey, before we end, we got to ask her the last final question. It's got to be
right. The last final question. I forgot.
Well, you forgot it because it's a new format, but we still got it. We still got to ask it in there.
So
too bad we don't have a grizzly bear podcast because some of the pictures you have in here of bears are like unreal.
Oh, a lot of those are from Katmai from Alaska this summer.
Man, that's insane. So you've said a lot about it through the podcast, but I'll ask it just simply this way. So when you hear the word wolf, what are the things that come to your mind?
I think of wolf as a concept. I think as like a mythical creature. I think of cold. I think of howling. I think of the moon. I think of shadow. I think of night. I think of longing. I think of the wild and like the vastness of the wild.
Nice.
Awesome.
I love all of those. That encapsulates it all.
Yeah.
Kate Ochsman, thank you so much. This was great. Really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on with us and, spending some time and sharing your photos with us and everybody in our community. Really appreciate it.
You guys, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for spreading, giving people a platform to talk about wildlife and to hopefully educate and inspire. Thank you for allowing me to share my opinions and my views as I've thought through them a lot over the last year being here in Yellowstone. And thank you for the work that you do for the sanctuary, for those wolves in particular, and for, just being a voice for the wild. I would say roars because I love lions, but you guys howl. You guys howl for wolves in the wild, and it's such a special thing. So thank you for what
Looking
you do.
to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the donate tab, and find out more information. We'll talk to you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.